Ending the kiss, Catherine half expected to see Poppy and the housekeeper, Mrs. Pennywhistle, both staring at them with scandalized expressions. But as she peeked over Leo's shoulder, she saw that the housekeeper's back was still turned toward them. Poppy had taken in the situation with an astute glance. "Mrs. Pennywhistle," she said glibly, ushering the housekeeper away from the threshold, "do come out into the hallway with me. I thought I saw a dreadful stain on the carpeting the other day, and I wanted to show you." "Is it here?" "No, perhaps over there." "Oh, drat, where is it?" Left in temporary privacy, Catherine looked into Leo's heavy-lidded blue eyes. "Why did you do that?" he asked. His voice husky, she tried to think of an answer that would amuse him. "I wanted you to test my higher brain function." A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Taking a deep breath, he let it out slowly. "If you have a match when you enter a dark room," he finally said, "which would you light first, the oil lamp on the table or the kindling in the hearth?" Catherine squinted as she considered the question. "The lamp." "The match," he said, shaking his head. His tone was soft and chiding. "Marks, you're not even trying." "Another one," she prompted, and he complied without hesitation, his head bending over hers. He gave her a long, smoldering kiss, and she relaxed against him, her fingers sinking into his hair. He finished the kiss with a voluptuous nudge. "Is it legal or illegal for a man to marry his widow's sister?" He asked. "Illegal," she said languidly, trying to pull his head back to hers. "Impossible, because he's dead." Leo resisted her efforts and looked down at her with a crooked grin. "It's time to stop." "No," she protested, straining toward him. "Easy, Marks," he whispered. "One of us has to have some self-control, and it really should be you." He brushed his lips against her forehead. "I have another present for you." "What is it?" "Look in my pockets." He jumped a little and laughed unsteadily as she began to search him. "No, you little ravisher, not my trouser pockets." Grabbing her wrists in his hands, he held them suspended in the air, as if he were trying to subdue a playful kitten. Seeming unable to resist, he leaned forward and took her mouth again. Being kissed while he held her wrists might have frightened her once, but now it awakened something deep and ticklish inside. Leo tore his mouth away and released her with a gasping laugh. "Coat pocket." "My God, I want to." "No, I won't say it." "Yes, there's your present." Catherine drew out an object wrapped in soft cloth. Gently she unwrapped a new pair of spectacles made of silver. Gleaming and perfect, the oval lenses sparkling. Marveling at the workmanship, she drew a finger along one of the intricate filigreed earpieces, all the way to the curved tip. "They're so beautiful," she said in wonder. "If they please you, we'll have another pair made in gold." "Here, let me help you." Leo gently drew the old spectacles off her face, seeming to savor the gesture. She put the new ones on. They felt light and secure on the bridge of her nose. As she looked around the room, everything was wonderfully detailed and in focus. In her excitement, she jumped up and hurried to the looking glass that hung over the entryway table. She inspected her own glowing reflection. "How pretty you are." Leo's tall, elegant form appeared behind hers. "I do love spectacles on a woman." Catherine's smiling gaze met his in the silvered glass. "Do you?" "What an odd preference." "Not at all." His hands came to her shoulders, lightly fondling up to her throat and back again. "They emphasize your beautiful eyes. And they make you look capable of secrets and surprises, which, as we know, you are." His voice lowered. "Most of all I love the act of removing them, getting you ready for a tumble in bed." She shivered at his bluntness, her eyes half closing as she felt him pull her back against him. His mouth went to the side of her neck. "You like them?" Leo murmured, kissing her soft skin. "Yes." Her head listed to the side as his tongue traced a subtle path along her throat. I don't know why you went to such trouble." "It was very kind." Leo's dark head lifted, and he met her drowsy gaze in the looking glass. His fingers went to the side of her throat, stroking as if to rub the feel of his mouth into her skin. "I wasn't being kind," he murmured, a smile touching his lips. "I merely wanted you to see clearly." "I'm beginning to," she was tempted to tell him, but Poppy returned to the apartment before she was able. That night Catherine slept badly, stumbling into the nightmare world that seemed as real, if not more real, than the infinitely kinder world she inhabited in her waking moments. It was part dream, part memory, the recollection of running through her grandmother's house until she had found the old woman sitting at her desk, writing in a ledger. Heedlessly Catherine threw herself at her grandmother's feet and buried her face in the voluminous black skirts. She felt the old woman's skeletal fingers slide under her wet chin and lift it. Her grandmother's face was masked with a sediment of powder, the ashy whiteness contrasting with her artificially darkened brows and hair. Unlike Althea, she wore no lip rouge, only colorless salve. "Althea talked to you," grandmother said, in a voice like dried leaves rubbing together. Catherine struggled to force out words between sobs. "Yes. And I don't understand." Grandmother responded with a scratchy croon, pressing Catherine's head on her lap. She stroked her hair, narrow fingers combing lightly through the loose locks. "Did Althea fail to explain adequately? Come, you're not a clever girl, but neither are you stupid. What don't you understand? Stop crying, you know I detest it." Catherine squeezed her eyes tightly, trying to stop the tears from slipping out. Her throat was tight with misery. "I want something else, anything else. I want a choice." "You don't want to be like Althea?" The question was spoken with unnerving gentleness. "No, and you don't want to be like me?" Catherine hesitated and shook her head slightly, afraid to say no again. She had learned in the past that the word should be used sparingly with her grandmother. It was an unfailing irritant regardless of the circumstances. "But you already are," grandmother told her. "You're a woman. All women have a whore's life, child." Catherine froze, afraid to move. Her grandmother's fingers became talons, the stroking changing into a sort of slow, rhythmic clawing on her head. "All women sell themselves to men," her grandmother continued. "Marriage itself is a transaction, in which a woman's value is tied to purposes of copulation and breeding. At least we, in our time-honored profession, are honest about it." Her tone turned reflective. "Men are foul, brutish creatures. But they own the world and always will. And to get the most from them, you must practice submission. You'll be very good at it, Catherine. I've seen the instinct in you. You like being told what to do. You'll like it even more when you're paid for it." Her hand lifted from Catherine's head. "Now, don't trouble me again. You may ask Althea all the questions you like. Mind you, when she began on her career, she was no happier about it than you. But she quickly saw the advantages of her situation. And we all have to earn our keep, don't we? Even you, dear. Being my granddaughter affords you no entitlement. And 15 minutes on your back will earn you as much as other women earn in 2 or 3 days. Willing submission, Catherine." Feeling stunned, as if she had just fallen from a great height, Catherine had left her grandmother's study. She knew a momentary, mad urge to bolt for the front door. But without a place to go to, without money, an unprotected girl would last only a matter of hours in London. The trapped sobs in her chest had dissolved into shivers. She went upstairs to her room. But then the dream changed, the memories transforming into dark vagaries of imagination. Becoming a nightmare. The stairs seemed to multiply, and the climb became difficult, and she went upward into deeper and deeper shadows. Alone and shivering with cold, she reached her room, illuminated only by the glaze of moonlight. There was a man sitting at the window. He was straddling the frame, actually, one long leg placed firmly on the floor, the other swinging negligently outside. She knew him from the shape of his head, from the powerful lines of his silhouette. And from the dark, a velvety voice that lifted the hairs on the back of her neck. "There you are. Come here, Marks." Catherine was suffused with relief and yearning. "My lord, what are you doing here?" she cried, running to him, waiting for you. His arms went around her. I'll take you far away from here, would you like that? Oh, yes, yes. But how? We'll go right out this window. I have a ladder. But is it safe? Are you certain? He put his hand gently to her mouth, silencing her. Trust me. His hand pressed harder. I won't let you fall. She tried to tell him that she would go anywhere with him, do anything he said, but he was covering her mouth too tightly for her to speak. His grip became hurtful, clamping on her jaw. She couldn't breathe. Catherine's eyes opened. The nightmare fell away, revealing a far worse reality. She struggled beneath a crushing weight, and tried to cry out against the calloused hand that covered her mouth. Your aunt wants to see you, came a voice in the darkness. I has to do this, miss. I has no choice. In the space of just a few minutes, it was done. William gagged her with a tight cloth that bit into her mouth, a large knot pressing hard against her tongue. After binding her hands and feet, he went to light a lamp. Even without the aid of her spectacles, Catherine perceived that he wore the dark blue coat of a Rutledge Hotel employee. If only she could get a few words out, plead or bargain with him, but the knotted lump of cloth made coherent sound impossible. Her saliva spiked unpleasantly at the intensely acrid flavor of the gag. There was something on it, she realized, and at that same moment she felt her consciousness breaking into pieces, scattered like an unfinished puzzle. Her heart turned sluggish, pumping poisoned blood through her collapsing limbs, and there was a ballooning, thumping sensation in her head as if her brain had suddenly become too large for her skull. William came to her with a hotel laundry bag. He began to pull it over her, starting at her feet. He didn't look at her face, only kept his gaze on his task. She watched passively, seeing that he took care to keep the hem of her nightgown primly down at her ankles. Some distant part of her brain wondered at the small kindness of preserving her modesty. The bedclothes rustled near her feet, and Dodger streaked out with a furious chatter. With quicksilver speed he attacked William's arm and hand, inflicting a series of deep, gouging bites. Catherine had never seen the little animal behave in such a manner. William grunted in surprise and flung out his arm with a low curse. The ferret went flying, slamming hard against the wall and falling limply to the floor. Catherine moaned behind the gag, her eyes burning with acid tears. Breathing heavily, William examined his bleeding hand, found a cloth at the washstand to wrap around it, and returned to Catherine. The laundry bag was pulled higher and higher until it went over her head. She understood that Althea didn't really want to see her. Althea wanted to destroy her. Perhaps William didn't know. Or perhaps he thought it was kinder to lie. It didn't matter. She felt nothing, no fear, no anguish, although tears leaked steadily from the outward corners of her eyes. What a terrible fate to leave the world feeling nothing at all. She was nothing more than a tangle of limbs in a sack, a headless doll, all memories receding, all sensation falling away. A few thoughts needled through the blanket of nothingness, pinpricks of light in the dark. Leo would never know that she had loved him. She thought of his eyes, all those colors of blue. Her mind was filled with a constellation of high summer, stars in a lion's shape. The brightest star marks his heart. He would grieve. If only she could spare him that, oh, what they could have had. A life together, such a simple thing. To watch that handsome face weather with age. She had to admit now that she had never been happier than in the moments with him. Her heart beat faintly beneath her ribs. It was heavy, aching with contained feeling, a hard knot within the numbness. I didn't want to need you, Leo. I fought so hard to stay standing at the edge of my own life. When I should have had the courage to walk into yours. Late in the morning, Leo returned from a visit with his old mentor, Roland Temple. The architect, now a professor at University College, had recently been awarded the Royal Gold Medal for his work in advancing the academic study of architecture. Leo had been amused but hardly surprised to discover that Temple was as imperious and irascible as ever. The old man viewed the aristocracy as a source of patronage to keep him financially solvent, but he had contempt for their traditional and unimaginative sense of style. you're not one of those parasitical dunderheads." Temple had told him emphatically, which Leo gathered had been a compliment. And later, "My influence on you cannot be eradicated, can it?" And of course Leo had assured him that it could not, that he remembered and valued everything he had learned from Temple. He hadn't dared to mention the far greater influence of the elderly professor in Provence. "Architecture is how we reconcile to the difficulties of life," Joseph had once told Leo at his atelier. The old professor had been repotting some herbs at a long wooden table, while Leo tried to help. "Non, don't touch these, mon fils, you pack the roots too tightly, they need more air than you allow them." He took a pot away from Leo and resumed the lecture. "To be an architect, you have to accept the environment around you, no matter what its conditions. Then, in full awareness, you take your ideals and form them into structure." "Can I do it without ideals?" Leo had asked, only half joking. "I've learned I can't live up to them." Professor Joseph had smiled at him. "Neither can you reach the stars. But you still need their light. You need them to navigate, NSCE pa? Take your ideals and form them into structure. Only in that way could a good house, a good building, be designed, or a good life," and Leo had finally found the cornerstone, the essential piece to build the rest on, a very stubborn cornerstone. His lips curved as he considered what to do with Catherine that day, how to woo her, or annoy her, since she seemed to enjoy both equally. Perhaps he would start a small argument and kiss her into capitulation. Perhaps he would propose to her again, if he could catch her in a moment of weakness. Heading to the Rutledge apartments, Leo entered after a careless knock, and found Poppy rushing to the entrance foyer. "Have you," she started, then broke off as she saw him. "Leo. I wondered when you'd get back. I didn't know where you were, or I would have sent for you. What is it?" "Sis?" he asked gently, understanding at once that something was very wrong. Poppy looked wretched, her eyes large in her white face. "Catherine didn't come up for breakfast this morning. I assumed that she wanted to sleep late. Sometimes her nightmares, yes, I know." Leo gripped her cold hands, staring at her alertly. "Out with it, Poppy. An hour ago I sent a housemaid to Catherine's room, to see if she needed something. She wasn't there, and these were on the table by the bed." Reaching out with a trembling hand, she gave him the new silver spectacles. And there was blood on the bed. It took Leo a moment to contain the rush of panic. He felt it as instant stinging from head to toe. And a heart-thundering blast of energy. A dizzying urge to kill. "The hotel is being searched," he heard Poppy say over the roar in his ears, "and Harry and Mr. Valentine are talking to the floor stewards." "Latimer has her," Leo said thickly. "He sent someone for her. I'll rip the filthy whoreson's guts out and hang him with them."